So who is corrective reading decoding for? It is for those students who make frequent errors, they omit words, they add words, they also miss high frequency words, they don't really use a lot of strategies, they're inaccurate in their reading. Sometimes they'll get one strategy and they apply that strategy everywhere. They don't move it anywhere else. They do a lot of switching things like a and the, and they just say, that's not a big deal. It doesn't mean it's something different. Okay? One of the key things is that they are not highly motivated. This has not been fun for them their entire careers in education most of the time, and you want me to read again. Okay? So we have to figure out a system to make it more motivating for them. Comprehension, or corrective reading comprehension, is for students who do not follow oral and written directions. You can say, please sharpen your pencil, pick up a green piece of paper and sit down at your desk, and they might pick up a green pencil, but the other things they go, I didn't get that. Okay? They also are the ones who, when it says to underline, they will circle, or they will just skip part of the directions. Okay? Students who are they're unable to hold information in their heads and then give you the information back out. They also cannot provide the rationale or the evidence for their thought process. So those inferring skills, they're like, I know that the kid jumped off the merry-go-round, but just because it was spinning fast, they weren't going to give you that piece. Okay? They utilize ineffective comprehension strategies, and once again, they're not highly motivated because this has not been any fun for them. So why would you make me do something that's no fun at all? There are a few design elements that are super unique just to direct instruction, especially the corrective reading. So it's systematically prioritized and sequenced for content and skills. Okay. So we're teaching the high priority skills first, and we're building on them. We're not throwing a lot of skills at them all at once. It's the scaffolding. You just fold in the new skills. We explicitly teach the content and the skills. There are no surprises. Kids they get used to the routine, they get used to the information being presented in that same system, so there's no surprises. They're not going to be like, whoa, you learned it, because we don't want them to have to learn how to do school every time they come into our classroom. Okay? There's also practice and repetition that is built in. So often our kids get so much information, they'll be successful one time, but then they don't always get the extra practice to make sure that they maintain that success. So those practices and the repetition are built in. There's also an cumulative review. Working with these programs, we take away the permission to forget. So often, we learn a skill and we're done. Well, through these programs, we just fold in. There's only about 10% new per lesson. So a lot of these lessons, a lot of them are review or the process they've had in the past. We also have built-in assessments to monitor the student learning. There's checkouts, there's mastery tests, all kinds of things. And there's also just visual. Did they get it? Are we solid on this skill? Are we moving on? Do we need to repeat? So they're already built in. The delivery, we talk about the art and science of teaching. The script is the science, and you get to be the art. My corrective reading lesson is not going to look like your corrective reading lesson because you have to bring your personality into it. You have to bring your excitement into it, and kids will call you out. They will know good and well if you're faking it. If you're like, this is terrible and I'm reading it like this, and they're going to call it and they're not going to learn. Okay? So you have to bring yourself into this. You be the art. Okay? We provide a lot of think time. When necessary, we change that depending on how complex the text or the skill is. If it's something that they just have to give right back to you, your think time is almost nothing. If they have to construct an answer in their head and then give it out to you, that's super hard for a lot of these kids. They're going to need more think time. So you're going to adjust that think time. That's not universal to a direct instruction program. That's universal to just good teaching, but you always want to talk about it. We also utilize a signal to create a unison response. That is another one of those things where people go, you're going to snap at my kids? Well, no, not necessarily. We're not necessarily going to snap at your kids, and we're not snapping at them. We're snapping so that we can control the think time, and we can also provide an opportunity for everyone to give an answer. So having a unison response gives everybody the chance to think, everybody an opportunity to respond. It also allows us to get multiple responses in a quick amount of time. Okay? We will talk a lot about our signals. We also are correcting every error and backing up to provide practice. So we aren't waiting until the end of a column, we're not waiting to the end of a row, we're going to correct it right away. It's going to be in a very strategic and organized pattern. So you're going to say something like, my turn, give the answer, your turn, let them practice, then you're going to back it up. The reason we back up is so that we can have a delayed test. They've already been successful with this material ahead of time, so we're going to go put them back where they were successful, give them another opportunity. It's also really easy for a kid to say the answer right after you give it to them, but if you put those distractors between and then they have to attack it again, then you're going to see whether they know it or not. Okay? We talk about the brisk pace. If we are slow and we're not giving lots of repetition in an efficient amount of time, they're going to get bored. I mean, it has to go, it has to move. If we're not moving, we're also not covering the content, and we're not keeping the pace. So the whole goal of this program is to close the gap. If we're going really slow, we're not going to close the gap. Okay? We also provide a positive reinforcement system. There are positive reinforcement systems in the program, like there's little boxes and you can give points for those things. Logistically, you want to have groups that are they're smaller than 15 is optimal. I know that most of us do small intervention groups. And so really like the perfect group size is like 6, because you can be like in their face all around them being like, nobody's got an opportunity to go away. So, but you can do it with a larger group. You just change your signals so that it is available for everyone. Okay? You're going to see the most naive students closest to the teacher or the teaching path. In case you haven't noticed, I have a tendency to teach over here, and I know I have a tendency to teach over here, but I also walk down this path. So I'm going to put my most naive learners right here, right here. My highest achieving student actually goes right here, because I have a tendency to do this. All right, so I can still see you, and I see you out of the corner of my eye. So just place them, know where you teach, and strategically place kids there. Sometimes you have to work really purposefully and be like, okay, I'm messing this up. So even when I have my table of 6, I still over here is my highest flyer in that group. So even if you have light group kids, you're going to have a high and a low in that group. So just be aware of where you're at. General rule for the placement is you put with the lowest placement first. So if you have, like, this kid needs everything. They're a decoding kid, they're a comprehension kid, they are fluency. We don't know what to do with them. Put their lowest placement first. So if you have a student that's a B1 decoding and B2 comprehension, decoding is going to come first. Okay? If you have a tie, they're like B1 kids across the board, go with your decoding. Here's why. You have pieces of comprehension in the decoding. They're going to read some stories, they're going to answer questions, they're going to do some of those things with it. They're not going to do any decoding and comprehension, really. Okay? So that's the rationale for logistics of that. All right. Universal features. We have talked a little bit. It's got the script, which is the research, and you are the arts, because you get to make it fun, you get to make it real. What is it in blue is what is said by you. What is in the parentheses is what the teacher does. Italics is how you want the students to respond. There are several other features in there, and we will get to them, but that's the general way every single level is set out. Okay. Next, we're going to go on to the signal. Signal equals engagement. Okay. We talk about having kids, they need an opportunity to respond. By utilizing a signal, everybody in the room gets an opportunity to respond. But you also have to control that think time. That's why we use a signal. The signal needs to be clear, it needs to be consistent. So it needs to be, we're going to state the task, we're going to give wait time, we're going to adjust it depending on how complex the task is, and then we're going to signal. I use a couple different signals. I will use eyes here, drop signal, which is also a visual and auditory at the same time. I will also use this, where I just go. Okay. I will also use, when I have a table, okay, it depends on your group and what you've decided you're going to do. What's the most important thing is that your signal never interferes with the learning task. We also have this thing where here's our signal. We're going to start, I'm going to do it right first. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say what word. It's not interfering. But if I cross my body here, this is interfering because I'm blocking the view. So being very, very cognizant of how you are presenting that signal and what the expectation is for kids. Signals can be auditory and visual, and you need to adjust that depending on the task. So auditory, you wouldn't even have to see it. But if I'm going like here, I'm saying the word is sat. Sat. Your turn. I'm not saying a thing. Okay, so it's auditory, visual. If the student's expectation, their eyes are going to be here, it doesn't have to be auditory, but it does have to be visual. If their expectation is their eyes are going to be in their book, then it has to be auditory. Okay? And it can be both. We use it so they answer together. Okay? Part of that signal is creating a focus, and it's to direct the learner's attention. Okay? So when I say, keep your place, eyes on me, I'm going to give you something to look at before I give the next task. Okay? Wait time is also think time, and you adjust it depending on the task. More complex, the longer it is, the more that they just have to give you back information, the quicker your wait time is. We utilize individual turns. Students are called in an unpredictable order. So I might go over here and I go Kira, and then I'm going to jump right over here and I'm going to do Andy, and I'm going to go over here and do Andre. Nobody knows where I'm going to go. Okay? That unpredictable order, the reason it's unpredictable and not random is because certain kids need to have certain practices. Okay? So you give those kids that need more practices, more practice. And the kids that are kind of flying, you give them practices, but they don't need as many. One thing that I have had done in the past is you have the popsicle sticks, except for you put kids' names in more than once. So some kids might have their name in there 4 times, and some might only have 2 times. And they don't really know, because then they don't think, my name got drawn, I don't have to think anymore. So they're still engaged, okay, because their name's going to get back drawn. Okay? So if a kid is some of our most naive, they get more individual turns. So their names are going to be in their popsicle sticks more. I also have had it where I just chart it, and I just tally mark so I can kind of keep track of how many opportunities they've had. Before the individual turn, we are going to identify whether it's an individual task or it's a group task. So we're going to say, keep our place, eyes on me, individual turn. So you all know that it could be you. You're all in the hot seat. You're all ready to go. So that means you're all going to think, theoretically. Okay. I'm going to ask the question. Today is Tuesday, just making sure everybody knows. So if I said individual turn, what is today? Michelle. Tuesday. So you are highly educated adults. Think how hard this is for kids who have to learn this process. So if we just throw this at them and expect them to follow, this is going to be one of those things like, holy cow, there you go again. So it takes a process, and you have to train kids how to do it. No, I appreciate it, because that's what I hope happens for the first time, because we haven't practiced yet. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to say, here's the question. So eyes are here. What is today? Get ready. Tuesday. My turn. Today is Tuesday. We want to make sure that we are clear, crisp, and together. Everybody, what is today? Get ready. Tuesday. Yes, today is Tuesday. Okay? We are going to practice signals and wait time, because what you also have is you have the kids that, they're going to sit over here. We're going to watch over there, and she's going to say Tuesday. I'm going to jump right on top of it. I'm going to be that shadow. Okay? We just practice it like it was an error, but we don't make a big deal about it, and we just give them another opportunity. And we might say, got to bring it together. We need everybody answering together, so everybody's doing their thinking. The goal is to do one lesson in 45 minutes, and I put in there, if familiar. If you're picking this up and you have not seen it before, there is no way you'll get through it in 45 minutes. Because there's too many complicated pieces, and if you're trying to figure out how the task has changed, because it might have just changed just slightly, and then you have to go back and fix it because we didn't do it quite right, and we haven't given them enough opportunities, it's going to take like 4 hours. I mean, it's long. It'll take you a whole week to go through a lesson if that's how it happened. So one of the things with these programs is you don't have to go to the book room, find a book, see what the skill is, try to figure out what the skill is, see how you're going to teach it. That's how you would plan. But here, you have to practice. You have to go through it, read through it, so you know what's happening. Okay? Remember, the goal is to get students through these programs at mastery as quickly as possible because we're trying to close the gap. Corrective reading is for grades 3 and up. Some programs are not for 3rd grade, but in general 3 and up. And they are behind. They're most of the time at least a year behind. So the goal is to close that gap. Students are expected to track with their fingers and their eyes at all times. So my husband is notorious for hating to put things together, and I am notorious for buying things that he has to put together. Baker's racks are awesome because they have all of these like poles and things and shelves. As adults, first, my husband is an English teacher by trade, loves to read. He does this all the time. Sometimes I'm shocked. I'm like, how did you, whoa, that's awesome. First thing he does when he lays the directions out and goes like this. Step 1, take all the plastic off. Thanks, Kayla. I'm glad we have to take all the plastic off. He tracks because it's complex. So thinking about these kids, this has been complex for them. Okay? They need to track. If you get to the point where you have a kid that can read fluently, doesn't skip words, isn't missing lines, isn't leaving off endings, for one, they're amazing and they're rocking through this, they might not need this program anymore. But they need to track. Another thing it does is it makes sure that they are seeing, saying, hearing, and touching. We talk about multiple modalities all the time. If we have a kid here who's reading this and it says corrective reading, decoding and comprehension, in their head, if they're doing that in their head, they basically had one exposure through vision. Okay? If they say it, touch it, hear it, and see it, that's 4 different modalities that's going into their brain. They need to go in multiple times. All right. And we talked about the student-teacher game a little bit earlier today. So students do get directions for points for being amazing. So if I would say, let's try this again. Everybody, what day is today? Get ready. Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday. Thank you for waiting for my signal. Okay? So it's a way to teach them how to do the process too. Also, but then I get points for things like this. I need everybody's eyes on me. Okay? So it's not saying, when you're not pointing somebody out, trying to do that behavior correction with stating what the positive is. All right? So you could also do this. Love the way table 1 is sitting up big. Okay? And as soon as that table that's slouching back there, or that kid is, give them praise and give it very specifically. Andre, thank you so much for sitting up. Another universal feature is there's mastery text. Approximately every 10 lessons, and depending on the program, sometimes they come a little sooner, sometimes they get spread out depending on where you're at. These can be found in the teacher's guide. The profile can be found in the teacher's guide, and you can track progress that way. Students need to pass the mastery test before moving on. If they don't so if you have an individual student who does not pass the mastery test, you're going to do a remedies just with that student. If you have a percentage of them that don't pass the test, do it with the whole group. It's not going to hurt anybody. Okay? And even if logistically you're like, I don't know how to do this, I only have 3 kids, do it with the whole thing. Okay? Because it's fast, quick, and to the point. Your remedies are also included in the story, or in the book. So if it says you have your mastery test and it says percentage here, don't pass, do this, this, and this, follow that. Okay? Do it either with the individual students or you can do it with your whole group. Okay? So your goal is 90% of your class. You want to have 90% or more pass, but you're still going to do that remedy with the individual kids who don't. Okay? There is a set correction procedure. You're going to correct every error as soon as it occurs. You do it every single time. So there's that need. You're like, oh, that kid makes so many errors. I don't want to call them out every time. You're not calling them out. You're just acknowledging the error. Okay? We also don't want kids to feel like they shouldn't make errors. So that's why we call them out. We just make it a consistent process where it's the same. You follow the procedure, and the pattern's basically the same. Your words may change. So it's going to be something like, my turn. Hey, today is Tuesday. Okay, everybody, what's today? Get ready. Tuesday. Yes, today is Tuesday. Okay, so I just pulled my turn and acted like I get to be, I'm part of your team. Here we go. Then gave you another opportunity to go. Then you're going to do a starting over. That's that delayed test we mentioned earlier. The delayed test breaks it up so they have some filler, some distractors before, so they can attack it again. Okay? One thing, some of the books, some of the lessons and exercises, they have the verification right there for you. You know you're supposed to say, yes, blue, yes, purple. But sometimes it's not there, and you're like, why is it not there? It gives you gives kids multiple exposures. It builds their confidence. So if you have that kid who kind of was really quiet, they said it, they thought they were right, they weren't really sure, and then you say, yes, it's Tuesday, they're like, oh, I was right. So it builds their confidence. And we talk about exposures, kids getting exposures. The more exposures they get, the better off we're going to be. Okay? So at some point in time, we are going to have to add all of those things, add those verifications in there. This is an added fluency procedure. For those of you who have read or have taught this program before, it has that little thing that says, repeat till firm, right? How many of you have thought, what does repeat till firm actually mean? Okay. Most of them got it, some of them got it. So what this procedure does is it takes care of your repeat till firm, because if you can go this last step without any errors, they're firm. It also is put into place to build the automaticity of whatever the task is. Okay. We will go through this in many different places, but you're going to want to refer back to page 13 occasionally, so that's why it's its own page. So the first one, you're going to follow the script exactly like it is. Then you're going to go back to the top and you're going to go for like the first word. So the first word is not. You're going to say, what word? Not. Next word's bat. What word? Bat. Okay, you go all the way through. You've added this verification in there all the way through. Then you're going to say, back to the top. And you're going to take away the wait time. You're going to make it smaller and smaller every single level. So instead of adding a verification this time, we're just going to say next, next, next. Okay? And then they're going to be awesome, and you're going to be like, whoa, here's your challenge. Top down, bottom up. Are you ready? There's no wait time. It's you're not doing a verification, and there's no teacher talk. Okay? I will demonstrate this all, but it's easier if we talk through it a little bit before. I use the words fast, faster, and fastest. Some people want to say firming up, mastery level. Another feature is a goodbye list. Okay? So during the lesson, you kind of make notes. You're doing those basically anecdotal notes. You're making notes on who's doing awesome, who's not, who needs extra practices. But if there's something that the whole group kind of struggles with, the first time through especially, you're going to add it to your goodbye list. So, and then I'm going to start the next lesson with the goodbye list. One thing is, I know, like me personally, I don't have 45 minutes for any of my corrective reading groups. I have a tops is a half an hour that I have right now. And I'm not getting through a complete and total lesson. I'm getting through 2 lessons in 3 days. Okay? So if by utilizing the goodbye list, we start the lesson every single day with the goodbye list, it builds consistency too. So no matter where you have to pick up in your lesson, it starts the same every single day. Okay? So I'm going to go here, and we're going to come and we're going to practice it just like it was introduced in the lesson the day before. I've added this word's choice on there. Check mark means that we got it right those days. Slash means that they missed it that day. In order to get something taken off your goodbye list, you have to have 3 checks. Okay? And then here's some of that art part gets to come out. So, say today is this. We don't have this one yet. And we say, what sound? Get ready. Everybody ready? What sound? Yes. We got it. We're going to check mark, and we're going to say goodbye to it. So I've had several people who are much more creative than I am. They have little songs they sing. They do cowboy goodbyes, or they say, "Yeah, out of here," and they say the sound or the word. You can take things off the list. It's kind of exciting to take things off the list. You can put anything on here. It can be sounds, it can be name, it can be words, it can be comprehension questions, it can be vocabulary. So, the rancher's name is Emma Branch, just so you all know. It's Emma Branch. So this was really hard for us the first time. Okay? You're all like, I've read Emma Branch, I got her. Right? So, I would say, okay, everybody, what is the name of the rancher? Get ready. Let's try it again. My turn. The name of the rancher is Emma Branch. Everybody, what is the name of the rancher? Get ready. Emma Branch. Yes, Emma Branch. So today, we're going to get a slash, because we didn't all respond. Okay? So we would slash it. And I'm not slashing because this is not a whiteboard. Okay? But if we did get it, we'd do a check mark. 3 check marks in a row, and it's off our list. Okay? So this is just another way to put in a review. Put in a review, and it's also to addresses those things that might be problematic that are going to come up again. So if we struggled all the way through the lesson that was in, we don't want to just forget about it so when it's exposed to again because we know it's going to come back. We've had extra practice put in. Okay? So those are some universal features that are included and we utilize in every single program we teach. Okay? So those are the same no matter what. Here are the levels of corrective reading decoding, and we're going to go into corrective reading first. So you have A. There are 65 lessons. These are virtually non-readers. They maybe know some sight words, but they're not always consistent on that. They do a lot of B and D switches, even as 3rd graders often. So they're virtually non-readers. The readability span is non-reader to 2.5. Okay, so that's 65 lessons. You're getting over 2 years worth of growth if done tightly. Okay, 65 lessons is really like a semester. Okay, there's some flexibility in there, but right. B1, also 65 lessons, 2.5 to 3.9, so more than a year's worth of growth. B2 is 4.0 to 4.9. This program, I'm just going to make that, it has to be super tight in order to get to your 4.9. Okay, if they're weak, if they're testing out weak at the end and they're barely testing, they're probably not going to be 4.9. Just so they have to be strong. And C, 5.0 to 7.5. If you have a 4th grader that tests into corrective reading decoding C, they probably don't need corrective reading. Okay? Because that means they're already reading at that level. Any of you who've taught those programs, I would highly recommend you don't do this with kids that are below 6th grade. Because it's a lot of nonfiction, the content is hard, and they get frustrated really easy. If you have a 6th grader who's reading and tested in there, you're probably going to be fine. If you have a junior, it's going to be awesome, and their ACT scores or college prep is going to actually go up. True story. So, I also am not going to put a 3rd grader here because it's above where their grade level, where they start. So be very cognizant of that when you are doing your placement testing. We're going to we're going to talk about the decoding placement test. It is in Appendix A in your book. So the materials you need the placement schedule. The criteria is also on the bottom for here of this one. It's also in your book. You need a stopwatch, copy of the passage for each student to read, and one to write on for yourself. And a writing tool, because sometimes I forget. I show up and I was like, I usually have one of those in my pocket, and I don't today. So once again, you're going to say in your book, you're going to say what's in the blue. You're going to be on page 246, and it just says, read the story out loud. Follow along with your fingers so you don't lose your place. Read carefully, and you start the time. I mean, there's not a whole lot of instructions here. Okay. There are 4 parts. And one part would lead to another part, so we'll get into that. The errors. This is a little different and sometimes very uncomfortable for people. The errors are Any deviations from print. Okay, so that kind of is different than what a lot of things do, a lot of tests do. Self-correction is an error because it's a deviation from print. Okay? Mispronunciation, addition, omission, misidentification, dropping endings is notorious, switching them around, deviation from print. We also have a 3-second rule where if they don't provide the word in 3 seconds, you provide it for them, it's marked as an error and you move on. If students misidentify the same word, it only counts as 1 error. So if you go through and they have misidentified the word hern 5 times, it's not 5 errors. Okay? Because you're not going to teach them the word before it's provided. Okay? So what you do is you just circle it so we know that they were consistently wrong. Okay? You also do a sound out. If they sound it out and don't give you the word, what word? If they produce the word right away after you do what word, it's awesome. It counts right. It's good. And repetitions are not an error if they are read correctly both times. Okay, so Kit made a boat, made a boat. Okay, it was exactly the same way both times. Okay. Conversations I heard were fantastic. We heard people say, well, I repeated it exactly the same, so that doesn't count against me. But they said, wait a second. You didn't repeat it exactly the same because you changed the last word. So those are conversations we have. The scoring sometimes is difficult, and we think we can just pull it out and go, but you have to be like thinking this is different.